Baruchot habaot, ladies. Baruchot hanimtzaot. Thank you so much for coming out on this night, Wednesday night, just 2 days before Erev Shabbat Kodesh, to be inspired by HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah. That's why we're here, really. That's why you guys get together. But before I begin, I want to say that this shiur is dedicated Leilui Nishmat Lipman Ben Yitzchak Tzvi Alav Shalom, who unfortunately passed away suddenly last night. His wife should have a nechama. I'm sure she's not doing very well. Also for the Ilui Neshama of Lev Ari ben Mordechai Alav Shalom, and for the Refuah Shlema of Mordechai ben Rachel and Dov ben Bracha Mirel. Kadosh Baruch Hu should send them a Refuah Shlema bimhera. We have a lot of work to do, so we're going to begin right away. For anybody who doesn't understand my Hebrew, just raise your hand and I'll translate. This week, we begin a new Sefer Shemot. And Chachamim teach that the next few Parshiyot have the ability to correct what we call the Pegam of the Brit. What does that mean and how is that relevant to a woman? In this week's Parashah, we meet the first female Mohelet in history, a female Moel. Her name is Tzipora, Alei Shalom, Moshe Rabbeinu's wife. What happened? A son was born to them, and according to the Chachamim, Moshe Rabbeinu was feverish, he's trembling. Tzipora sees that he's unable to circumcise the baby, so she takes a sharp stone and she does the Brit Milah all by herself. Can you imagine? And what does she tell the baby? She says, Ki chatan damim ata li. Chatan damim lamulot. Which means, for you are a bridegroom of blood to me. A bridegroom of blood concerning circumcision. Now what does this mean? Says the Even Ezra alav shalom. He explains that the minhag of the women was to call their circumcised sons Chatan, like a chasen. He says, the Even Ezra, that when a baby was 8 days old, a baby boy, the mother would tell the baby like this: my dear son, from this moment on, you're a chatan. You're destined for one woman, and you have to guard the brit, the hamei v'nyavin, what the bris is, between you and her. You have to guard it. So we say to this baby, Kishem shenichnas labrit, that is Brit Milah, ken yikanes leTorah, lechuppah, ulema'asim tovim. We bless the baby that he should merit to enter the chuppah. Why would I have to mention the chuppah? He's a baby. You know what the Jewish mothers in Mitzrayim used to do when a baby was born, when a baby boy was born? Before they used to put him in the Nile River, they constructed a mini chuppah. They put 4 little small sticks over the little teva. On top of the sticks, they put like a little handkerchief. They mamish made a mini chuppah, and they would tell this baby before they put him down the Nile, my dear son, I don't know if I'll ever merit to see your chuppah, because the Egyptians decreed that every male child should be drowned in the Nile. But remember that if you get out of this alive, you're going to be a chatan, you're a chatan. Guard the brit between you and your wife, and don't squander yourselves away on other women. Now why is this so amazing? Because the mother is indeed the first mohelet, that's a female male, of the baby, even though she's not performing the Brit Milah physically. But she's spiritually removing the orla from her son's heart. Now what is this orla? The extra skin. Rashi HaKadosh Alav Shalom explains that it's the seal of the heart and the coverings. A mother tells her baby, you should know a woman is a creature who tends to suffer. So don't grow up unaware. Don't grow up with a sealed heart. Learn to speak the words that this woman will need to hear. Don't be an arel sfatayim. Be open and tell her what her heart yearns to hear. You hear this? It's so amazing that a mother educates her son from infancy in order to prepare him already for marriage. She tells him, you're a chatan, so guard the dignity of Bnot Israel. Is that amazing? Chachamim explain that if a woman wouldn't instill from infancy the concept of shmirah, which means guarding yourselves, there would be no morality in the world. That means it starts from when you're young, from when you're an infant already. Because Paro wanted to destroy and separate Jewish families. He encouraged men to do as they wished. But our women became responsible for the faithful relationships of the world, and we instill this in the males from the moment they're born. We see to it that the world remains moral and unblemished. As mothers, you have to remain faithful to the upbringing of faithful sons. You want your sons to be faithful to one woman, no? To be kedoshim. After all, the world is drowning in the dilemma of unfaithfulness. And concerning the women of this generation, the Lubavitcher Rebbe Alav Shalom said that the neshamot of the women who came out of Egypt, it says, nitgalgelu. They were reincarnated in the generation of Mashiach. You know what that means? That means that we, you, me, we are the neshamot of those women long ago. It means that we have to fight for the survival of our home, of our husbands, for our husbands. We have to fight for our families and what that family will ultimately look like. And that brings me to a very uncomfortable subject. I was just now, before the shiur started, on the phone to Eretz Yisrael with my Rabanit, with my Rebbitzin. It was 3:30 in the morning for her. Can you imagine? But she called me because it was an important topic. As you know, these days, there are unfortunately young Jewish people and even older Jewish people who wish to celebrate and usher in this secular New Year's. The New Year's Eve, as they call it, which is otherwise known as the Sylvester. It's called the Sylvester because it's named after a particular person. Now, many Jews, they join the Gentiles on the streets who are celebrating this day. Some Jews even get together by themselves and they do some kind of celebration bash. They have some kind of dinner and they drink beer and I don't know what else they do. Comedy shows and I don't know what else. And it's unfortunate that many Jews do not know enough about the history of Christianity and its implications and effects on Judaism for over 2,000 years. They also don't know who Sylvester really was and what his function was. So I just want to briefly, since we're talking about morality, I want to briefly understand, and I want you to understand, who this man was, what time period that he lived in, and how he influenced the entire school of Christian thought against Klal Yisrael, against the Jewish people. So we'll start by this. Close to 2,000 years ago, Rome was a paganistic society and they worshipped idols. They were of the Avodah Zarah. The Romans entered Yerushalayim. They conquered the city. They conquered the inhabitants. They burnt down the Bet HaMikdash. They destroyed it. And then they placed the remaining Jews of the city into exile. The Romans did not only exile us to various parts of the world, but they tortured us and they massacred the Jewish people. But the Roman Empire and the city of Rome, which is in Italy, eventually it became the center of Christianity in the world. Where's the Pope? In Rome. Where's Rome? In Italy. Where is the Vatican, which is where the Pope resides? Rome. It's situated in Italy. That's Rome today. Today, the Pope doesn't have the power or influence that he once used to have many, many, many years ago. Why? Because it's due to the division of the church, separation of religion ideals that divided the Catholic Church, let's say from the Protestant movement. There's a whole history. So the power of the Pope declined. But hundreds of years ago, the power of the Pope was tremendous. He had the power, first of all, to coronate kings and even to destroy them. He also had the ability to dictate to the kings how to run their governments, how the church should function. The Pope had the ability to dictate to the kings what to do, when to do it, and to whom to do it. When he gave the order for all Christians to go out on the holy mission of the Crusades, who was the king at the time? His name was Richard the Lion-Hearted. He was the king of England. And then we had Louis IX, the king of France. They obeyed the Pope's decree and they joined the Crusades, marching towards Yerushalayim. And on the way to Eretz Yisrael, tens of thousands, I would say hundreds of thousands of Jewish families were killed. Houses were destroyed and burnt down. People were tortured and massacred for who? For Yeshu. You know who Yeshu is. There was so much destruction during that time, so much violence, so much death, and that was only during the period of the Crusades. The Inquisition, which took place a little later, over 500 years ago, after 500 years, they tortured, they killed thousands of Jews, burning many of them at the stake. What about the blood libels? Ever heard of that? The Christians accused the Jews of killing their Christian neighbors and using their blood to bake them matzot on Pesach. And even though the Jews protested by showing proof in the Torah that a Jew is not permitted to eat the blood of a chicken, let alone the blood of a human being, the Christian church ignored this fact, and tens of thousands of Jews were innocently killed as a result of the blood libels. So the history of the Christian church in general preached that any Jew who refused to convert to Christianity should be put to death. We all know this, right? You know the history. Today, the church has a more modern view of the world and no longer uses torture or death to force a conversion upon what they call heretics. Today, they use all kinds of temptations and various tactics in order to lure the people. But anybody who reads the history of the church will learn exactly how many thousands upon thousands of Jews were tortured and murdered at the hands of the church. But how did that all start? When did the allowance of massacring thousands of Jews for their refusal to convert first begin? And who thought of such an idea? Kill the people if they don't want to convert. Who thought of it? There was a Roman Caesar named Constantine. During his reign, the Pope was a man by the name of Sylvester I. Sylvester I managed to convince this Constantine to convert and to become a Christian. What happened? Sylvester was the one who transformed the Romans from being pagans to being Christians. So before they were Avodah Zarah, now they were being Christians. And after this Sylvester guy convinced the Caesar to convert to Christianity, he forced Constantine to sign a formal document that took away the legitimacy of Judaism to exist bichlal. He says they don't deserve this religion. And that document, that treaty, gave allowance for the Jewish people to be pursued, to be persecuted, to be tortured and massacred by the Christian population. It was the first treaty in the world that stated that whoever refuses to convert to Christianity is allowed to be beaten and he's allowed to be tortured and massacred. Prior to that treaty, it was unheard of to murder a human being based on whether or not he wants to convert. Who ever heard of such a thing? Do what you want. You want to be Jewish, be Jewish. You don't want to be Jewish, don't be Jewish. But Sylvester, this guy, And his royal document was the basis and the foundation for all the future pogroms, blood libels, all the inquisitions, and all the massacres that took place against the Jews by the church for over 2,000 years. Why am I telling you all this? Not to bore you. When did Sylvester, this Rasha Merusha, pass away? When? January 1st, very good. On the same day that hundreds of thousands of people celebrate the New Year's, this guy passed away. It's meant to be for them a grand memorial service. That's what they're celebrating, which has turned into a day of folly. Everyone's drinking, honoring and ushering in the secular New Year for them. And unfortunately, there are so many Jews among them. Teenagers, women that are getting together and doing, celebrating in the wrong ways on this night. They have no idea what the significance of New Year's Eve is. Many people are going out to celebrate together with the rest of the Gentile world, and it's even worse if they just celebrate amongst themselves. They have no clue what they're really celebrating. They assume they're celebrating, the Gentile calendar, New Year's. Our New Year's is New Year's? Yes or no? When is our New Year? Rosh Hashanah. They think, we're celebrating the secular New Year. But in essence, it's as though they're going out to commemorate the birth and the death like of a Hitler, Yemach Shemo. Would you celebrate his birth? I wouldn't even celebrate his death. Would any Jew think to go out on such a night and memorialize or honor the day that Hitler was born or the day that he died? So many Jews, due to a lack of knowledge, go out and they celebrate and they don't even realize what they're celebrating. You're getting together on New Year's Eve and you're having fun and you're partying and you're laughing. That's part of the immorality in the world. Therefore, it's so important that on New Year's Eve, on the day that Sylvester I passed away, you know what Jews should be busy with? They should be at home, busy with the study of Torah, so they can turn this destructive day into a day of Kedusha. That's what you should be doing. You should be sitting at home with a Sefer Tehillim, davening, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should only bring the Geulah already. Not go out and drink a beer and go to a restaurant and have a good time and party. You understand? This is to keep up the Kedusha. In Sefer Shemot, which is this week's Parshat, we're taught how to overcome this difficult generation. We're in a difficult generation. And the Sefer begins with the words, Ve'elu Shemot B'nei Yisrael. These are the names of Klal Yisrael. Why do we have to begin with the letter Vav? Ve'elu. Vav. What's the Ve? So Rabbi Cohen, alav Shalom, explains this because there is no apparent connection between Sefer Bereshit and Sefer Shemot. So the Vav is just there to tell you that Sefer Shemot is just a continuation of Sefer Bereshit. The Vav is necessary because otherwise you wouldn't know Bechalal that there's any connection between the first book and the second book. But why? And Chachamim say, well, because of this. In Sefer Bereshit, most of the women are akarot. They're barren. Right? Sarah can't have babies. Rivka had a hard time. Rachel definitely had a hard time. At some point, Leah has a hard time. So, pretty much in Sefer Bereshit, most of the women are barren. In Sefer Shemot, however, it's a baby book. The women are multiplying and filling the land. What does the pasuk say? Par'u ve'ishratzu ve'yirbu ve'yatzmu bim'od me'od. 6 words. These are 6 words to inform us that the women were giving birth 6 babies at a time. Sextuplets. Can you imagine that? Try to imagine what PTA looked like. So there seems to be no connection between Sefer Bereshit, they're all akarot, Sefer Shemot, they're all... What's the major difference between these 2 Sfarim? The Zohar HaKadosh teaches us that in Sefer Bereshit, Sarah Imenu, alei shalom, taught us to drive away the evil from our homes. And we see that it happens because Yishmael was sent away. Ishmael. Rivka Imenu, alei shalom, taught us to ensure that brachot are given to the right child. Because what did she do? She concocted the whole shtick there that Yaakov should get the brachot instead of who? Esav. Rachel Imenu teaches us not Rachel doesn't stop crying for the sake of her children. That's what she taught us. Never stop crying for the sake of the children. And Leah Imenu teaches us that even if you're not the most beloved of wives, you should still try to find something to be grateful about. So in contrast, in Sefer Shemot, the women are thrown into the agonizing challenges of womanhood. They're thrown into a new world of challenges different from Sefer Bereshit. Therefore, in Sefer Shemot, the woman is given a new name. It's a name that we haven't yet come across, not once in Sefer Bereshit. The new name is Ivriyah. The woman is called an Ivriyah. Remember that song from Benny Friedman? Ivriyah no yichive. What is Ivri? A Jew, like another name for a Jew. In this parasha, a woman is given a new name. She's now called Ivriyah. That's the female version of Ivri. What happens? Paro summons the midwives and he says to them, B'yaldechen et ha'ivriot, when you help the Hebrew women give birth. Oh, very interesting. Until now, we haven't heard that word, Ivriyah. But anyhow, he commands the midwives to kill the babies, and they ignore his command. So he summons them and he wants to know why they're ignoring his decree. I told you to kill the babies. Who were the two midwives? Do you remember? Shifra and Pu'ah. Who were they really? Yocheved and Miriam. Then they tell Paro, what can we do? The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. Before we even arrive at the scene, they're already giving birth. We're not at fault. They tell them, Ki lo hanashim hamitzriyot ha'ivriot. These women are not like the Egyptian women, these Hebrew ladies. Oh, there's that word again, Ivriyah. And then Moshe Rabbeinu is put into a basket on the Nile. Batya draws Moshe out of the water while Miriam watches over the basket, over Moshe. And then she approaches Batya and she says to her, Ha'elech vekarati lach isha meineket min ha'ivriot. If you want, I can go and call one of the Hebrew women to nurse him. Here, there's that name again, Ivriyah. Where did that name suddenly pop up from? And what does this imply? Hashem says, Neshama tova, Bereshit is over. You're no longer a young maiden. You're now an Ivriyah. What's an Ivriyah? A Hebrew woman is called an Ivriyah because of her tremendous emunah. Because she's the daughter of Avraham, who stood on the other side of the river, me'ever lanahar, that means on the other side of the river. He stood against the polytheistic world and he remained a believer in the one true God. That's why we're called Ivriot, because we come from Avraham. The Even Ezra says, Dear Ivriyah, life has now become an angry river, and you have to move on from one stage of life to the next. You're going to have to graduate from the stage of being your mommy's little pampered child to the stage that's called Ivriyah. And we know this is difficult because it means that quite often you might be left alone. There are times you're going to be standing on that very narrow bridge with raging waters beneath you. And the question is going to be, are you able to pass from one stage to the next successfully, Ivriyah? will you be able to cross a violent river? And Hashem says, Beshetzef ketzef histarti panai rega mimech, which means with a little wrath did I hide my countenance for a moment from you. In other words, there are going to be moments in life when you feel as if there is no Father in heaven. As though Hashem has thrown you into a stormy sea. Beshetzef ketzef. The word ketzef is like, the white foam that's created by the wave. There's like this white foam. As it comes into the shore, you see like the white foam. That's ketzef. And the Midrash says that the word beshetzef actually stands for something. It's a Rashi Tevot. It's an acronym for all those Ivriyot in our parasha. Bet stands for Batya. Shin, Shifra. Tzadi, Tzipora. And this one is who? Pua. Beshetzef. These women were able to surpass the raging waters of nisyonot in life. But can a woman withstand all the nisyonot alone? No, you can't. Therefore, Hashem gives you a new name. You are now an Ivriyah. Ivriyah is composed of two words. Ever, Yah. If you don't lift your eyes, Hashem says, and look beyond, Ever means beyond, and to Hashem, you won't be able to cross those raging waters of life. Because Hashem says, Shifchi kamayim libech nochach pnei Hashem. You have to pour your heart to Hashem and always look to Him for guidance. So Paro commands these midwives to kill the male infants by strangling them just as their heads are coming out. And they tell him, oh, I'm sorry, Paro, but if we only wait for the head to come out, how are we supposed to know if it's a boy or a girl? And Paro says, oh, you can know when the head comes out if it's a boy or a girl. Ladies, you're not going to believe this. The Midrash informs us of a fascinating fact. A girl, you'll know it's a girl because a girl is always born, usually, I'm not saying if there's chas v'shalom something extraordinary that happens. A girl is born, let's say this is the face, let's say my palm is the face. It will always be born with her face towards Shamayim, like this. A boy is born with his face towards the Adama, this way. Why is it like that? Because a woman knows she cannot manage without siyata dishmaya, without divine guidance. A woman knows she's just a vessel of which through her life flows. And she knows she has to rely on who? On HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She knows she can't truly succeed in anything that she does if she doesn't look to Shamayim for assistance. Is that incredible? Incredible. Be'emet. So let's talk about Miriam for a moment, because we're going through. Let's talk about Miriam. Is this interesting?
Amazing.
So let's talk about Miriam for a moment. Her father, Amram, divorces her mother, Yocheved, because of Paro's decree. He felt, well, there's no point in staying married if the infants are going to be killed. He was being a very practical guy, practical man. He's the rabbi of the whole community. And when all the Jewish men saw their leader divorce his wife, they followed suit. They all wanted to divorce their wives. So little Miriam, Rashi says, alav shalom, she was 5 years old. She comes to her father and she says, Abba. Even then, the ladies are smart. You can't do this because Paro only decreed death on the little boys. But you divorcing Ima is wiping out the males and the females. How can you allow such a thing to happen? Miriam convinces her father to remarry his wife, to remarry Yocheved. And Chachamim explained that what Miriam told her father was a lesson to future generations. She was teaching us not to decree things upon ourselves. We can't decide what kind of child is going to be born and chas v'shalom decree a terrible ending for that baby. Amram is a practical man who thinks, well, what happens, God forbid, if at Yocheved's age now she gives birth to a child with defects? Well, what would be the purpose of bringing a child into the world if he's going to die very soon? Ladies, we don't make such decrees without guidance of Rabbanim. Chachamim praise all the mothers who raise children with special needs. All those mothers are going to be first in the march of redemption. Mashiach is going to tip his hat to them because they fought to hold on to their pregnancies despite the risks. He's going to salute them for their courage to raise children with special needs. So Miriam tells her father, Abba, you are decreeing on the Olam Haba and the Olam Hazeh of these children. Because when Paro decreed to kill the males, he only decreed death in this world. Well, what does that mean? You're not going to believe this. You know I like to teach you new things. Things you never heard. Chachamim teach us, it's a scary thought, that a child who wasn't given the opportunity to come down to this world at all doesn't have a share, not in this world obviously, and not in Olam Haba. But a child who comes down, regardless of how limited he is or how long he lives, still merits to have both Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. So Rav Zaychik Alav Shalom asks, well, what value is there for a baby during his first days on earth? Think about it. He can't speak, can't see, can barely see. He sleeps all day. He's not developed. He's very frail. He's weak. He has no understanding of life. Well, what's the point of him? Well, he has no value. He says, nevertheless, we have to know that that baby is filled with such joy by the fact that he's just able to take a breath in this world. This baby is just happy to be in this grand marketplace where he could purchase Olam Haba. It's a zchut to be in this precious world because this is the place where you can earn Olam Haba. And that holds true for an infant who's handicapped or sick, chaz v'shalom. That means even though that child might suffer in life, he's going to be elevated to the next world and he's going to receive rewards beyond the measure. But if he does not descend at all, he's going to mourn the fact that he didn't merit this world or the next. That being said, let's talk about Batya for a moment. Batya is anxious for a child. She wants a baby. She was barren too. But she's living in a world where her father wants to drown babies. You have no idea how hard that is. The daughter of Paro wants a child, but she gets no legitimization from anybody. Her father says, no way! Her maidservants are discouraging her. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh Alav Shalom says that it's hard to bring a child into the world when people around you think it's not a good idea. Namely your husband. Sometimes the husband, puts his foot down. So what does Batya do? Her intention is to save Moshe Rabbeinu. Chachamim tell us that Batya's neshama was very pure. How do we know this? Because the Or HaChaim says that although there was only one maidservant that went with her when she came down to bathe at the Nile River, Batya dismissed her from the vicinity of the child. Why did she do that? Chachamim tell us because she thought that the maidservant would discourage her from keeping the baby. Ladies, this is the first time the Torah discusses discouragement. Batya is afraid that her maidservant is going to dissuade her from keeping the baby. So she dismisses her servant and she remains alone with the basket in her hands. How difficult is that, ladies? staying alone there, just you and the baby, with no moral support, with no encouragement. But you should know that children bring down goodness. They bring bracha down to the world. When Yocheved sees her little infant Moshe, the pasuk says, Vatere oto ki tov. And she saw that he was good. The Midrash says that the entire house was filled with light when Moshe Rabbeinu was born. Children increase the goodness in the world. You see them, and you automatically want to be good. You just, you become good around them. What do we see from all of this? We're seeing such greatness in the feminine trait of the Ivriyah. You know what the Ivriyah does? These Ivriyot here do battle to survive in the world that breeds extinction. How were these women able to bring children into this world of galut that they were living in? Paro was destroying the children. They were truly amazing. They were truly amazing. But wait. If in the merit of women, there's a world, and there's Am Yisrael, Paro is a fool. Because who should he have killed? Who should he have killed? The female babies. Why is he killing the baby boys? They don't matter much. After all, when there's a woman in the world, there's a nation. When there's a woman in the world, there's birth. There's a partnership. There's redemption. And there's hope. Paro should have said, Hava nitchak mala, not Hava nitchak malo. So was Paro a dummy? Why did he keep the girls alive and kill the boys? No, he wasn't a dummy. Paro was a very smart man. So what happened? What were his intentions? The Or HaChaim says that Paro knew that the women are responsible for the spiritual and moral existence of the world. Hear this? He knew how to kill a woman, how to kill her spiritually. He knew that if you want to finish off a woman, you don't have to kill her physically, mamish. You just leave her alone without a partner in the world. You leave her either with a man who's not committed to marriage, and then she, miskena, has to stay single and waiting. Or you leave her with a man who she's married to, but he's too busy working and not paying enough attention to her. That's how you finish off a Jewish woman. Why? You see, a woman has a natural tendency that screams out, I need to be with someone. So what does Paro do? He leaves the females alive while the adult males are busy with back-breaking labor. The young single women can't find the guy, can't find the mate because they're all being drowned in the Nile. And a woman can't really live without a relationship. So Paro is thinking, you know what's going to happen? She's now going to be forced to take an Egyptian man. And slowly but surely the Jewish women will marry Egyptian men, and Bnei Israel will eventually be eradicated. No more Jewish people. Goodbye. That's how you finish off a Jewish woman. You don't kill her. You leave her without a partner. And since women prefer a partnership above all else, the Jewish women, Paro thought, will attach themselves to Egyptian men because they just don't want to be alone. And what's the end result of that one? The Jewish woman's neshama is going to be blemished because her soul will mingle with the impure souls of the Egyptians. That was Paro's plan. Good plan? Yes or no? It's a great plan. Except that he didn't foresee one thing. Never did he dream, this guy, that the Jewish women would live in a world where the males just don't want to get married. And even if they do get married, they live as though they're single. And yet the women refuse to sin. This is something Paro did not ever dream would happen. So many women in this generation are so alone, and the Yetzer Hara badgers them to sin. The Yetzer Hara is trying to encourage them to find that partnership, whether they're single or married. Do it. Do it. It's okay. You're alone anyway. It's okay. Do it. And they refuse. And they refrain. And they remain kedoshot lifnei Hashem. That's something Paro did not foresee. He did not foresee the gan na'ul achoti kala. Shlomo HaMelech Alav Shalom writes this pasuk in Sefer Shir HaShirim, where he says, a locked garden is my sister, my bride. You lock your garden. Ladies, it's very hard to do, because the Zohar HaKadosh and the Gemara tells us that from the moment the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, it says, Nital Ta'am Biyah. You're not going to believe this. We're told that the zest and the excitement, the yearning for a relationship and intimacy was taken away from a man. That means that the strong impulse for a man, which is to be with a woman, that was sort of kind of taken away. The men no longer have the same feeling for serious kinds of relationships anymore. Is that possible? What, you don't need a woman? No. Men simply don't take interest the way they used to. The need to be with a woman and to care for her, which was meant to be something very natural for a man, that was removed from the man. It's not for the shiur why, but men no longer have the same kind of feelings towards marital unions, towards bonding with a woman. How could this be, and how could a woman continue to live that way? Because we need it. The Zohar HaKadosh says that in the zchut of all those women whose eyes are soft from crying because they want to be brides, but they're non-committed men out there. In the zchut of all those women who are married, but they don't experience the essence of a real marriage. And yet these women choose not to blemish the brit. And they don't engage in immodest behavior. In the merit of the single women who realize that they're only meant for one man. And they wait. And they wait. And they wait. And they don't sin. And they lock their garden until it's the right time. All these women merit the name that was given to those tzadikot of long ago, who also sacrificed for the sake of the bris, and they kept themselves holy. You merit to be called an Ivriyah in the eyes of Hashem. This is a high title. You hear this? Chachamim ask, well, why did Hashem take us out of Egypt? You know why? It's because He saw our suffering. What does the pasuk say? Ra'o ra'iti et oni ami. He says, I have seen the suffering of my people. What suffering did Hashem see? Chachamim say the suffering of women who have no real partners, whether they're single or married. That's what Hashem sees. That's what Hashem saw. But why does Hashem refer to this as oni? Suffering. Why is it suffering? Oni comes from the word ona, which means the cycle. It's a cycle. In our terms, it's a cycle of a woman. The cycle of a woman. The Midrash says that when a man is meant to remember his wife, you know when does he remember us? When he's supposed to remember us, right? And then her ona, her cycle, doesn't come to fruition for whatever the reason may be. This is an oni. It's a suffering of some kind. When there are many onot that pass by, whether you're single, here we go again, another cycle, and I'm still not married. Another cycle, and I'm still not married with children. Or another cycle, and my husband doesn't want to be with me. So whether you're single or not, and another or not passes, with no real purpose, with no real accomplishment, this is true suffering. And Chachamim bemoan this pain. And they say, how is it that a man has not made you his wife yet? You're so good, you're so pretty, you're so smart. And worse, how could he marry you but not elevate you to the status of a woman, of Isha? Indeed, this is a very lonely and suffered existence. But wait, didn't Paro know this special quality a Jewish woman possesses? He didn't know that Jewish women have the power to remain separate and holy regardless of their suffering? Didn't he know that Jewish women have the strength to keep themselves in the Gan HaNa'ul, in the locked garden? Didn't he know that even if a single woman fails, God forbid, she has the strength to lift her eyes up to the Shamayim, to ask Hashem for forgiveness, to pick herself up and renew her spirit? Didn't Paro know the trait of the Jewish woman? He didn't know. He didn't know. What didn't he know? This pasuk. Vayakom melech hadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada et Yosef. A new king arose in Egypt who did not know Yosef. What does that mean? Who didn't know who Yosef was in Egypt? This guy, Yosef the Tzaddik, revolutionized the financial world in Egypt. The whole country was lifted from the famine because of this man. How could Paro not have known that? Says the Kli Yakar Alav Shalom, he explains, Paro didn't know the Yosef Syndrome. What's the Yosef Syndrome? The Yosef Syndrome is when they throw you into a deep pit in life. When they try to sell you out, when they try to finish you off, when they try to turn you into a slave and to accuse you of things you never did. They throw you into a dark dungeon. And you still manage to rise to such a level of malchus, of malchut. That's the Yosef Syndrome. Paro didn't know that. Jewish women had the Yosef Syndrome. Jewish women, they're like a bottle of ketchup. You know, remember, think about us women. Even though you think there's nothing left in that bottle, what do? You still turn the bottle over and you squeeze it and squeeze it. And what do? You give it one last push, the bottom. And then what happens? Boom, you give birth to something. Something actually comes out of that bottle. A Jewish woman knows how to turn the greatest pain into the greatest position of life. The position of standing upright, with a dignified stance, remaining loyal to our faith. So Paro didn't know this syndrome of Yosef, that the more they caused them suffering, poor Yosef, the more he flourished, the more he succeeded, the closer he became to the Ribono Shel Olam. Paro wanted to kill Bnei Yisrael before they became great and many. He says, Pen yirbeh, before they multiply like this, look what's going on. They're giving birth 6 babies at a time. And God says, Pen yirbeh, Ken yirbeh. They will become great and they will multiply. So what's this voice that keeps yelling out? Ken yirbeh, Ken yirbeh. You will succeed, you will succeed, you will multiply, you'll have success. Chachamim say, you know what that voice is? It's you, the Isha Ivriyah. It's the woman. Because when people make you suffer, you have the ability to get up and show them that you could withstand the nisayon. That's the nature of a Jewish woman. They say pen, no, unlikely. You say not pen, ken. I will. They say shtuyot, and you say tfilot. Paro didn't know this trait of ours. Why didn't he know? You know why he didn't know? Because it doesn't make sense at all. Doesn't make sense. A Jewish woman defies all logic. According to the nature of the world, who's going to take you out of your predicament, out of this locked garden? Who's going to make your shidduch come? What, you really think a miracle is going to happen to you according to the natural scheme of things? They tell you, who's going to make it happen for you? And you say, I believe it's going to happen. Of course it's going to happen. A Jewish woman has a trait that it's illogical. It's illogical. It's called beterem, before. What does that mean, before? Beterem means before. I'll tell you what that means. When Paro asked the midwives why they didn't kill the male infants, remember what they told him? They said, oh, the Jewish women are not like the Egyptian women. Beterem tavo alehen hameyaledet vayaladu. Before the midwife even gets there, they already give birth. That's a Jewish woman. She's sure that something good is going to happen beterem, before it even happens. She's sure it's going to be good before it even happens. Yeah, but nothing happened. Not yet. You didn't get married yet. There's no chatan yet. True, but I know I'm going to find the right one, Be'ezrat Hashem. Yeah, but you're 65 years old. Are you still hoping? Of course I'm still hoping. What does it mean that the Jewish women were not like the Egyptian women? An Egyptian woman saw the possibility of a baby only when she felt the contractions. She thought, oh, maybe a baby's taka coming. Ivriyah, which means Egyptian woman, comes from the word tzirim, which means contractions. But the word Ivriyah comes from the word ubar, which means a fetus. And that was the difference between us and the Egyptian women. When the baby is barely growing in our womb, the Jewish women, we already start to sing to him. We decide on a name already. We already know what clothing we're going to get this baby. We have this syndrome of hoping before anything ever happens in life. We could already see the birth. We could envision this kid's life. But Paro, he's a very logical male whose face is turned downwards. Jewish women, however, are illogical and they're idealistic. We're always seeing that one step ahead of us. We know that in the end, everything is going to be what? Good. And that trait breeds miracles. Nochach penei Hashem. We are always looking up towards Hashem and davening for that nes, for that miracle. True?
True.
One Talmidah once asked me, does that mean that in the schus of me locking my garden, my shidduch is going to come? If I keep myself, holy. And I told her, listen, I wish it was that simple. Because your journey as a woman is a lot more difficult than that. And then I explained to her what the Baal HaTurim, alav shalom, says concerning this idea, this inyan. He says that when Amram married Yocheved, the pasuk says, "Vayelech ish mi bet Levi, vayikach isha mi bet Levi." This man who was from the tribe of Levi took a wife, took a woman from the house of Levi. And the Baal HaTurim, he sees these words, "Vayelech ish," and the man went. And he tries to locate, where do these words, "Vayelech ish," appear in anywhere else in Tanakh? I want to make a connection between this Vayelech ish and maybe there's another Vayelech ish somewhere out there. And he finds it. Where? In Megillat Ruth. It says, "Vayelech ish mi bet Lechem Yehuda." What is the connection between that Vayelech ish and this Vayelech ish? In Megillat Ruth, Elimelech sees that the poverty strikes the land. And he says, I don't need this. The last thing I need, since I'm a rich guy, is for people to come knocking on my door, then I gotta, give handouts. I'm running away, going to Moab, closed doors, closing up shop. And in Parshat Shemot, Amram goes and he remarries Yocheved, and Moshe is born as a result because of that union. So there's a Vayelech ish in both places over here. In this Vayelech Ish in Shemot, Amram went and he remarries the wife. In this case over here, Megillat Rut, Vayelech Ish, this guy runs away from his responsibilities. Says the Baal HaTurim, Kach nolad hagoel harishon. This is the way the first Redeemer was born. Kach nolad hagoel ha'acharon. And that's how the final Redeemer was born. The first Mashiach, first Redeemer was Moshe Rabbeinu. And the final Redeemer is David HaMelech, who came from Ruth. That's Mashiach ben David. How was he born? He was born in a generation where men are running away from their responsibilities. Elimelech sees that all the Jews in the city, they're hungry. They're going to come to him for a handout, and he runs away. Amram almost did the same thing. He sees that there's a decree on the male infants, and he also wants to shirk his responsibility and run away from the reality. And Hashem says, listen here. He doesn't say, listen here. I'm saying, Hashem doesn't talk like that. He says, just like in Egypt and in the story of Ruth, he says, you women have to learn to get up and take the initiative. Because it's not pleasant to always see a locked garden. You have such beautiful fruits to offer. You have such motherly potential. You can strengthen your roots and you could produce wonders. So get up, go out, and be productive. In Megillat Rut, you know what happens in that story. Ruth has to go down to the field and lay at the feet of Boaz. She has to offer this guy marriage. How difficult and unpleasant is that? I don't recommend it. Do not try it at home in this generation, because I could just see some girls going out there laying at the feet of I don't know who. Don't try it at home. In Egypt, it was the same. After all, the men were discouraged from having children. They didn't want to be with their wives. What did the woman do? She prettied herself in a kosher way. She put on a little makeup. She dressed nicely. She cooked the delicious fish that she retrieved from the Nile. And then she went down to her husband by the fields where he was working. And amid all that hard work, this guy turned around, and who does he see standing behind him? His wife, standing there like a queen. And she gives him food to eat. And she's healing his wounds from the burning sun. And she pampers him until he agrees to have another baby. That's what the women did. They used all the efforts in the world until they were able to have these 6 children at a time. What's my message to you? In this generation of Galut, while it's true that there are common rules of courting, dating between men and women, while it's true that it's nice, if you're seriously dating, if he buys you a gift or pays for the meal when you go out, all this is true. But you're in Galut now. You're in the Gullus now. So put on a nice pair of shoes, dress nicely, don't be so dominating or intimidating on a date. You see all these girls, they come and they show who they are, tremendous presence. These days, that intimidates a guy. Not to mention the girls that show up to a date like they're going to go play basketball somewhere on a court somewhere. Now what does that mean? I'm not telling you chas v'shalom to engage in immodest behavior. Not at all chas v'shalom. But you should be more aware. You should be more aware, and you have to understand that men who are in the galut these days, they are weak. And in their weak state, they may not be able to give you what you truly deserve. So you might just have to be the one to initiate certain aspects of the relationship. En ma lasot, there's nothing to do. You might have to apply yourself just a little more in order to bring the redemption to light. It might mean that you have to be the one, especially if you're married, to ignite the love, to ignite the warmth at times, because men can very easily fall asleep. They fall asleep very quick. As a matter of fact, I'll give you an example of men falling asleep. The Midrash relates that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, alav shalom, was once teaching his students, everybody fell asleep. So he wakes them up and he says, Chevraya, friends, I have a riddle for you. Which woman gave birth to 600,000 babies in one womb? Ooh, that woke them up. So the Talmidim, they start to argue, and they gave up. They gave up, I don't know. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi tells them it was Yocheved. Ooh, how's that possible? He says, well, she gave birth to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was the leader of 600,000 Jews, and he was like a father to them. So it's as if Yocheved had 600,000 babies in her womb. Oh, the Talmidim were so excited, and they returned to their learning with a little bit more excitement and a little bit more awakened. But what's this riddle all about? Why did it wake them up? Really, it wasn't a riddle. It was a Musa Haskell. It was a big Musa he was giving them. Because Rabbi Yehuda was telling them, shame on you. Look how a woman fights. Look at what the women did in order to maintain their partnerships and bring more children into the world at that time. Look how they suffered just to preserve their dignity and modesty. And you tell me, what's going to be with you? What's your role as a male exactly? To learn and to remember what you learned. Remember the Torah. And even this you're not able to do. You fall asleep in the middle of a shir. Yalla, get up. Look how much a woman does in order to uphold and maintain a house. You're not ashamed of yourselves. Yalla, get up. That was his message. And just from the busha, from the embarrassment of remembering Yocheved and what she did in order to give birth, in order to remarry, in order to bring the Geulah, it kept them alert and awake for the rest of the shir. I'm going to end with this thought. And one Talmidah once said to me, it's very nice, all this that you're telling me about partnerships and initiating and trying to ignite the warmth and, being more assertive and maybe less intimidating. Very nice, but personally speaking, I don't feel the need to have a man in order to be fulfilled in life. Some women say that, out there. She goes, I have a husband, so she's married. I have a husband who doesn't really pay much attention to me, but so what, big deal. So he runs away a little bit. He runs off, I don't know what's the big deal. I do my thing, he does his thing, and we manage to live a good life. We coexist. Truthfully, I don't need him. I was a little shocked. It took me a couple of seconds to get my act together. And I said to her, why do men run away? Why vayelech ish? Why don't they want to get married? And then when they're finally married, why do they shy away from their household responsibilities, from their wife, from their children? And I said to her, well, when Moshe Rabbeinu was a shepherd and a little sheep ran away from the flock, what did he do? He ran after it to see why it abandoned the herd. Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of Klal Yisrael, the one who's going to give the Torah on Har Sinai, went to find out why a little sheep ran away from the herd. And I told her, and you don't want to know why your husband is staying away from the house? Maybe he's lacking something. Ask yourself, why vayalechish? Why is my husband seems to be... And I want to reveal the answer to you, which is in this week's parasha. The answer is a little harsh, but it contains a great lesson for all us women. The pasuk says, Ki chayot hena. The women were like animals. What does that mean? Sounds harsh, but what does it mean? Ladies, why do men run away from relationships? From the house, from their wives, from their responsibilities? And what do the words ki chayot hena mean? What does it imply? The midwives, they tell Paro that Jewish women, they're not like the Egyptian women. Before the midwives arrive, what happens? They already give birth. That's like an animal. Before you can get to them, meaning they have the characteristic of an animal. I'll explain. The animal feels it doesn't need anybody. Does a cat have a midwife? Ever see a cat with a midwife helping it to give birth? No. Does the female cat go looking for the male cat after she gives birth? Yes or no? She doesn't care about him at all. Jewish women have a wonderful trait called Ivriyah. That means we're fighters. We're like Chava, like the animal. We fight through life and we survive, and that's amazing, and there are times you don't need anybody. We could do it alone. But Chachamim warn us that it's this specific trait that can change you into a tough person. Because people could look at you and think that you're so capable and you're so successful, you don't need anybody. You don't need anybody. So what happens? We have two names that contradict one another. One name is Chava, the animal who fights to survive at all costs. And you have to be that way in order to survive this dargalot. But your second name is Isha. Ki me'ish lukachazot. Because from man, this woman was taken. There's always something you could learn from a man on your journey in life as a woman. So how can these two traits coexist and not do harm? On the one hand, you have to be a chava. You have to be a fighter of life. You have to survive it. On the other hand, you were taken from man, which means you need him. Now we're living in a generation where technically a woman does not need a man at all. Think about it. A woman can have a baby without a man today. It's called the sperm bank. You don't need a guy. Financially, a woman can hold her own. Go talk to all the ladies who are living in Lakewood supporting their husbands and the whole families. They've shown we could do it. In the chinuch department, she's also more than capable. She's the disciplinarian, the educator of the house. Who needs a guy? Who needs a man? That's the problem. That's the problem. When you have too much of chava in you, and you're like an animal fighting to survive, and you're amazing at it, and you show the world, I don't need anybody, then there are times you forget to be a woman, an isha. You forget that you do need a man. For example, there are single mothers with children, and there are married women whose husbands are absent from the picture. And you have to be very careful when that happens. Because one Talmidah once told me she's a divorced single mother with a few kids. One kid in particular, the two were already married, one was a little kid in the house, and she says, true, I have to be careful, but you know, my son is missing a male figure in his life. His father has nothing to do with him. And I was thinking, no, he's not. He's not missing a male figure in his life. Actually, it's just the opposite. He's missing a female role model in his life because that woman took on the role of a father. She's always filling the shoes of the father because her son doesn't have an active father in his life. So she thinks she has to be the strong one, the disciplinarian, the tough one. And that's understandable because there's no male role model in the house. But where's the mother exactly? This woman's son is growing up without a mother. She took on a fatherly role and she forgot all the softness and the compassion that belongs to a woman, to the mother. That part of her nature disappeared because she's too busy being the man in the house too. And she needs to get that back for her sake and for the sake of this little boy. So I'm going to end with this. How do you keep the balance of chava, which you need, the strong, fighting survivor, to be able to survive in your life? And how do you guard the woman in you, the isha, who must also accompany you through life? How do we guard and preserve this very soft, gentle, womanly heart of ours? You do it with the pasuk in this week's parasha. The pasuk says, Vayar besivlotam, and he saw their suffering. Moshe sees the suffering of the people. Chachamim say that when you ignore another person's pain, you're becoming like the animal. You have to understand the concept of people having a need to need. The only way to remain as strong as Chava, to fight and survive, yet remain a soft, gentle, refined woman, is to be aware of all those around you who are suffering. Moshe Rabbeinu noticed the suffering of his brothers in Egypt, and you too have to be sensitive to those in need. In this way, you'll be able to remind yourself that you're also a woman with needs. And you can remain a gentle, refined, and delicate woman only if you'll understand that in this world there are needy souls out there. And that was the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu. Even though he had everything in Paro's palace, because he grew up as a prince in the palace, he was able to see the suffering of the people. So what's the definition of suffering according to Chachamim? It's when something isn't appropriate for you. For example, you're over the age of 30 and you're unmarried and without children. That's just inappropriate. That's suffering. You're in your mid-50s, you're married, and you're without children. That's also inappropriate. That's true suffering. You're married 30 years and you still lack a meaningful relationship with your husband. That's not appropriate. That's suffering. It's when you're 55 years old and you show up to shul in a Hali Habi skirt. Inappropriate. Doesn't go. That's suffering. Hashem sees the suffering just like he saw it in Mitzrayim all those years ago. He sees it today too. So Rav Yerucham of Mir Alav Shalom says that Hashem saw the wrinkles of the suffered people. And look what he did. You're not going to believe this. Hashem opened up each wrinkle. Can you imagine? And he saw what caused that wrinkle to take shape. That means Hashem sees every small suffering of yours. And there's going to come a day, very soon, when Hashem is going to shower upon you miracles just like he did for the Ivriyot. He's going to protect you from harm. He's going to open up the floodgates of mercy, and he's going to pour an abundance of blessings into your life. You have not been forgotten. You are an Ivriyah and you are amazing. So in this month of Tevet, Tevet comes from the word good, Tov, of good, only you, Isha, the woman, can ask for the most illogical things in the world. Ask Hashem to provide you with blessings, and ask Him to see the pain of all those women out there in the world who have to pass this very narrow bridge of life. Vayar besivlotam. Be sensitive to their pain, and Be'ezrat Hashem, when that day will come very soon, we're going to see the reflection of your tefillot and your bakashot, because all those women are going to be redeemed, and together with those women we're going to usher in this great new era of the Mashiach. Amen. Ken Yehi Ratzon.